The Calthiri had conquered 47 star systems before they arrived at Earth. They were efficient, methodical, and utterly ruthless in their approach to subjugation. When their shadow-black warships descended through the clouds over Beijing, London, and New York, humanity did what it had always done when faced with impossible odds. It fought back with everything it had. The war lasted 3 weeks. 3 terrible weeks of plasma fire raining from the sky, of cities reduced to ash, of desperate last stands that ended in silence. The Calthiri were simply too advanced, too numerous, too prepared. They had studied humanity from afar, cataloged its weapons, analyzed its tactics. They knew exactly how to break human resistance. What they didn't know was how to break the human spirit. Commander Zethrall stood in the processing center of what had once been called Chicago, watching the latest batch of human prisoners shuffle through the scanning gates. Most went quietly, their eyes hollow with defeat. These would be sorted into labor categories and shipped to various mining operations across the empire. A few resisted and were immediately subdued by neural disruptors. These would be sent to the compliance facilities for behavioral correction. Then there was the child. She couldn't have been more than 8 standard Earth years, small even by human juvenile standards. Her clothes were torn and dirty, her dark hair matted with dust. But her eyes burned with something Zethrall had seen in the eyes of cornered predators on 100 different worlds. Not fear, not quite rage. Something raw, more primal. Defiance. The scanning gate beeped as she passed through. Zethrall glanced at the readout and felt his secondary heart skip. The child registered as a Class 5 potential threat. That was impossible. Class 5 was reserved for trained soldiers, enhanced operatives, individuals with years of combat experience, not children. "Scan again," he ordered the technician. "There must be an error." The technician complied. The result was the same, Class 5. The system even flagged her with a special notation that Zethrall had only seen a handful of times in his 20 cycles of military service. The notation that appeared when the subject's psychological profile indicated they would never submit, never break, never stop resisting no matter what measures were applied. The Calthiri had a word for such beings in their language: unyielding. "Protocol demands termination," the technician said quietly. Zethrall studied the child. She stared back at him, and despite the dampening collar around her neck that should have made her docile, despite the neural suppressors built into the walls, despite everything designed to crush the will of captives, she looked at him like she was memorizing every detail of his face, like she was making a promise to herself. "No," Zethrall said. "The Empress has decreed we demonstrate mercy to the young. Send her to the Youth Compliance Facility on Detention Moon 7. If any can be rehabilitated, it will be there." It was a death sentence of a different kind, and they both knew it. The facilities broke everyone eventually, but it was protocol to try, and Zethrall had spent a career following protocol. The child's name was Maya Chen, and she had watched the Calthiri kill her parents on the first day of the invasion. She had hidden in a collapsed basement for 6 days, surviving on rainwater and packets of crackers, while the world above burned. When they finally found her, she had bitten the first guard hard enough to draw blood through their armored glove. They had beaten her unconscious for that. She didn't care. Pain was just a feeling, and feelings could be endured. Detention. Moon 7 orbited a dead planet in a forgotten system. The facility housed 3,000 human juveniles, all deemed too dangerous or too valuable for simple labor assignments. It was run by Overseer Krent, a veteran of the Empire's penal divisions who believed that given enough time and the right methods, any will could be reshaped. Maya arrived on a prison transport with 50 other children. They were sorted by age and threat classification. The younger ones, those under 6, went to the indoctrination wings where they would be raised as Calthiri citizens, their human heritage stripped away through drugs and conditioning. The older ones, those past adolescence, went to the work camps on the surface. Maya and 30 others fell into the middle category. Old enough to have formed their identities, young enough that the Kalthiri believed they might still be malleable. They were taken to Section D, the Compliance Training Center. The first lesson began immediately. They were stripped of their clothes and possessions, given gray uniforms that chafed against their skin. The guards spoke in harsh clicks and whistles, the Kalthiri language that none of the children understood. When they didn't respond quickly enough to commands they couldn't comprehend, they were struck with shock prods. Maya learned to move when the guards gestured. She learned to stand when they wanted her to stand, to kneel when they wanted her to kneel. But inside, where they couldn't reach, she remained herself. She counted the guards on each shift. She noted the patterns of their patrols. She memorized the layout of the corridors. She waited. The other children broke in different ways. Some became hollow, obeying without thought. Others retreated into themselves, becoming catatonic. A few lashed out and were dragged away to the punishment cells, never to return. Maya did none of these things. She complied just enough to avoid the worst punishments. She spoke when required, in the handful of Kalthiri phrases they were forced to learn. But she never stopped watching, never stopped planning. The guards noticed. In their reports, they described her as superficially compliant and potentially deceptive. Overseer Krent took a personal interest. He had broken thousands of humans, representatives from dozens of Earth's nations. A child should have been simple. He started calling Maya to his office once a week. The office overlooked the facility's central yard, a gray expanse where the children were allowed 1 hour of exercise each day. Krent would sit behind his desk, an imposing figure even by Kalthiri standards, and ask her questions. "Do you hate me, human child?" he asked during their third session. Maya stared at him with those dark, burning eyes. Yes. Most children lied. They said what they thought would keep them safe. Krent found her honesty interesting. "Why do you not cry like the others?" he asked. "Why do you not beg?" "Would it matter?" Maya replied in her broken Kalthiri. "No," Krent admitted. "It would not." "Then why waste the energy?" Krent leaned back in his chair. In the child's eyes, he saw something he had encountered only rarely. The young of most species, when broken from their families and placed in captivity, became desperate for any scrap of kindness, any promise of safety. They would attach themselves to their captors, a survival mechanism evolution had given them. This child showed no such tendency. She expected nothing from him, hoped for nothing, and yet she had not given up hope itself, he could tell. She was simply waiting for the right moment to act on it. "You interest me, Maya Chen," Krent said, pronouncing her name carefully. "You are like a creature from my homeworld. We call them Vreks, small but vicious. They bite and claw even when dying. We hunted them to extinction because they could not be tamed." He leaned forward. "Is that what you are? A creature that cannot be tamed?" "I don't know what I am," Maya said, "but I know I'm not yours." The months crawled by. The facility operated on a strict schedule designed to break routine thought. Wake cycles were irregular. Meals were provided at unpredictable intervals. The children never knew if they would be subjected to educational programs, hard labor, or hours of sensory deprivation. Everything was designed to make them dependent on their captors, to destroy their sense of self. Maya endured it all. She shared her food with the smaller children. When the guards weren't looking, she helped the weak ones complete their work quotas. She became a quiet center of stability in the chaos. Though she never spoke of plans or rebellion, she knew the cells were monitored, but in the exercise yard, where the surveillance was less complete, she passed messages. A look here, a gesture there. Slowly, carefully, she built a network. Not of fighters, they were all too young and weak for that, but of watchers. Children who could tell her guard schedules, who could note when shipments arrived, who could map the facility piece by piece. On Earth, there had been stories. Her grandmother had told them, old tales from humanity's past, stories of escapes and revolutions, of prisoners who refused to be broken. Maya didn't know if the stories were true, but they had given her something, a framework, a belief that resistance was possible. One night, during a sleep cycle, alarms shrieked through the facility. Maya jerked awake in her cell, heart pounding. Through the small window in her door, she could see guards running, shouting in their clicking language. Something had happened. It took 3 days for the truth to filter through the children's whisper network. A human fleet had struck a Kalthiri supply depot 2 systems away. Not the ragtag resistance ships that had been harrying the Empire for months, but actual warships, a coordinated fleet. Humanity had regrouped somewhere beyond the Empire's borders and was fighting back. The news spread like electricity through the detention facility. Some children wept with relief. Others began to hope again. The guards cracked down hard, imposing new restrictions, but they couldn't crush the knowledge. Earth had not surrendered. Earth was still fighting. Maya felt something shift inside her. She had been waiting for the right moment. This was it. Not because rescue was coming. She was realist enough to know Detention Moon 7 was too remote, too unimportant. But because if humanity was fighting, then she had to fight too, in whatever way she could. She began to push boundaries. Small things at first. Taking an extra second to comply with orders, meeting guards' eyes when she should have looked away, testing their responses, learning their limits. She was punished, of course. Hours in the isolation cells, reduced rations, shock prod strikes that left her muscles spasming. She didn't care. Pain was temporary. Fear was temporary. What mattered was learning. Every punishment taught her something about the system, about its weaknesses. Overseer Krent called her to his office more frequently. He seemed fascinated by her refusal to break. During one session, he showed her footage from Earth. Cities rebuilt under Kalthiri rule. Humans working peacefully in factories and fields. Children playing in supervised recreation centers. "See," he said, "humanity thrives under our guidance. Your resistance is pointless. We offer structure, purpose, efficiency. Why do you fight what is inevitable?" Maya watched the screen. The humans in the footage looked healthy enough. Fed, clothed, safe, and completely dead inside. She could see it in their eyes. The same hollowness she saw in some of the children here. "Because you're wrong," she said simply. "Wrong about what?" "That this is inevitable." She turned to face him. "You think you've won because you conquered Earth. But conquering isn't the same as defeating. You can chain our bodies. You can't chain what makes us human." "And what is that?" Krent asked, genuinely curious. Maya thought about her grandmother's stories, about stubborn, difficult people who fought when fighting made no sense, about the honey badger her grandmother had shown her in videos, the small creature that attacked lions and survived venomous snake bites through sheer, unreasonable toughness, about humans who chose death over surrender, who smiled in the face of oppression, who found humor in the darkest moments. "We don't give up," she said. "Ever. Even when we should, especially when we should. It's not logical. It's not efficient. But it's who we are." Krent studied her for a long moment. Then he made a decision that would change everything. "You have spirit, Maya Chen. More than any human child I've processed. Perhaps more than any human, period." He tapped his desk console. "I'm transferring you to the surface work camp. You're old enough now, and clearly the compliance training is ineffective. Perhaps hard labor will teach you reality." The surface of Detention Moon 7 was a nightmare landscape of gray rock and thin atmosphere. The children transferred there worked in processing plants, sorting materials extracted from the dead planet below. They wore breathing masks and worked 12-hour shifts. The mortality rate was significant. Maya was assigned to Facility 7, a sprawling complex of warehouses and sorting bays. The children here were older, harder. Many had been on the surface for years. They had formed their own social structures, their own hierarchies. The strong survived. The weak disappeared. On her first day, a boy twice her size tried to steal her food ration. Maya broke his nose with a headbutt. Word spread quickly. The small new girl was dangerous. They left her alone after that. But isolation wasn't what Maya needed. She needed allies. So she started doing what she had done in the compliance facility. She helped. When someone collapsed from exhaustion, she covered their quota. When someone got injured, she shared her medical ration. Slowly, grudgingly, the other children began to trust her. Among them was a teenage boy named Dmitri, who had been on the moon for 4 years. He had been 16 when captured, now looked 40. But his mind was still sharp. He knew things, the layout of the entire facility, the schedule of supply ships, the locations of weapons lockers. "Why do you care about this?" he asked her one night, as they huddled in their shared dormitory. "Even if we knew where everything was, what could we do? We're children. They're an empire." "On Earth," Maya said quietly, "there was an animal called a honey badger, small thing, maybe this big." She held her hands apart. "But it could fight off lions, could survive cobra bites. Scientists said it was the most fearless creature on Earth." So humans used to compare themselves to honey badgers when things got tough. It became a saying, "Honey badger don't care." It meant that when something is stubborn enough, tough enough, mean enough, size doesn't matter. Weapons don't matter. All that matters is that you refuse to quit. Dmitri laughed bitterly. "We're not animals, Maya. We're scared kids in a prison." "No," Maya said. "We're humans, and humans are the honey badgers of the galaxy. We just need to remember it." Over the following months, Maya did something remarkable. She began organizing, not a rebellion, not yet, but a network of information and mutual aid. Children shared what they knew. They protected each other. They stopped fighting among themselves and started paying attention to their captors. The Kalthiri noticed the change but didn't understand it. The human juveniles seemed more cooperative, not less. Work quotas were being met. Incidents of violence dropped. By their metrics, the surface facility was functioning better than ever. They didn't realize they were being studied, mapped, understood. The opportunity came during a supply delivery. A transport ship had landed at the facility's main bay, carrying equipment and supplies. Maya's work crew was assigned to unload it. She made sure Dmitri and 3 other trusted children were part of the crew. The guards were bored. This was the 100th such delivery they had overseen. They stood in their usual positions, shock prods at their sides, watching with barely concealed contempt as the human children hauled crates. Maya dropped a crate. It split open, spilling components across the floor. The guards clicked angrily, gesturing for her to clean it up. She knelt, gathering pieces, and palmed something small. A tool. Nothing much. Just a hex driver used for maintenance. It went into her pocket. The guards never noticed. Over the next 3 weeks, Maya and her network stole. Nothing obvious. Nothing that would trigger inventory alerts. A tool here. A piece of wire there. Components that could be explained as damaged or misplaced. They hid everything in the ventilation system, behind panels, in places the guards never checked because they had never had reason to check. "What's the plan?" Dmitri finally asked. "We have tools. So what? We can't fight our way out. We can't pilot a ship. What are we doing?" "We're not escaping," Maya said. "We're sending a message." She gathered her core group in a forgotten storage room. 18 children, ages 8 to 17. They looked at her with a mixture of hope and fear. "The Kalthiri think we're broken," Maya said. They think humans are just another conquered species. They're wrong, but they don't know they're wrong yet. We're going to teach them. She laid out her plan. It was insane. It would probably fail. But it was something. It was action. It was human. The facility's main power relay was located in a sublevel near the processing bays. It wasn't heavily guarded because there was no reason to guard it. The human children had no technical knowledge, no means to access it, and no reason to even know it existed. Except Maya had spent months getting a child named Carlos assigned to maintenance training. Carlos had learned the facility's systems, and Carlos had mapped every power conduit in the complex. On the chosen night, during the sleep cycle, Maya's team moved. They had made tools into weapons, not to fight guards, but to disable systems. They split into groups, each with a specific target. Group 1, led by Dmitri, disabled the surveillance network. It took them 40 seconds, just long enough to create a blind spot. Group 2 cut communications. The facility went silent, unable to call for help. Group 3, including Maya, reached the power relay. Carlos had taught her exactly which circuits to overload. She wedged her improvised tools into the conduits and twisted hard. The lights died. Emergency systems kicked in, bathing the facility in red light. Alarms should have sounded. They didn't, because Group 2 had done their job. In the chaos, Maya's network moved to Phase 2. They didn't attack the guards. They went to the dormitories and started waking children, hundreds of them. And they gave them a simple message. Run! The guards tried to restore order, but in the darkness, with their communications down and their surveillance blind, they were suddenly the ones who were afraid. Human children poured into the corridors, not attacking, just running, screaming, creating chaos. It was impossible to tell who was dangerous and who was just panicking. Maya led her core group to the landing bay. The supply ship was still there, scheduled to depart in the morning. She had watched the pilots during previous deliveries, had seen how they opened the hatches, how they ran the pre-flight checks. She didn't know how to fly it, but she knew how to access it. They swarmed the ship. The pilot was sleeping in his quarters, confident that no prisoner could possibly threaten him. He woke to find a dozen human children in his ship. He reached for his weapon. Dmitri hit him with a stolen shock prod. The pilot convulsed and fell. Now what? One of the children asked, looking at the bewildering control panel. Maya ran her hands over the communications console. She didn't understand the Kalthiri symbols, but she understood basic systems. Every ship had a distress beacon. Every beacon had an activation switch. She found it, and she broadcast. The message was simple. The location of Detention Moon 7, the number of children held there, and a single word in English, repeated over and over, that would be picked up by any human ship in range. Help. The Kalthiri regained control of the facility within an hour. Maya's rebellion was crushed. The children were rounded up, some injured, all terrified. They were herded back to their cells while guards searched for the ringleaders. Overseer Krent stood in the landing bay, looking at the damaged ship, the disabled systems, the chaos his facility had become. And he felt something he had not felt in decades of service. Uncertainty. Maya was brought before him in chains. Real chains this time, not just dampening collars. They had learned she couldn't be controlled through simple measures. She stood in his office, bloodied and exhausted, but her eyes still burned. Why? Krent demanded. You accomplished nothing. Your message was blocked before it cleared the moon's orbit. No one is coming to rescue you. All you did was ensure your own execution and the punishment of everyone who followed you. Maybe, Maya said. But we tried. That's the point. We tried. That is insanity. No. Maya smiled, and it was a terrible smile from such a young face. That's being human. We don't quit. We don't give up. You can kill us, but you can't make us submit. Not really. You can chain our bodies, Overseer, but you can't chain what we are inside. And that's why you'll lose eventually. We have conquered your world. You've conquered Earth. You haven't conquered us. You never will. Krent stared at the child who should have been broken, who by all logic should have learned helplessness months ago. Instead, she had organized a rebellion with stolen tools and teenage determination. It had failed, but that wasn't the point. The point was that she had tried. For the first time in his career, Overseer Krent felt something that might have been respect, or possibly fear. He wasn't certain which. "Take her to the punishment cells," he ordered. "Maximum security, and post a guard. 2 guards. No, 3. As they dragged Maya away, she looked back at him one last time. "You should have killed me when you had the chance," she said. "Because I'm not done. None of us are done. We're humans. We're honey badgers. We don't care about your chains. We don't care about your empire. We'll keep biting until you let us go or we die trying." The guards took her away. Krent sat alone in his office, staring at the reports of the damage. 7 million credits in equipment, 17 guards injured, 3 months of operational delays, all because of one small human child. In the deepest cell of Detention Moon 7, Maya sat in darkness. Her body ached, her hands were shackled, but inside she smiled. Because even if her message had been blocked, even if no one ever knew what she had done, she had proven something to herself. That chains could be broken, that systems could be disrupted, that humans, no matter how small, no matter how young, could fight back. And somewhere, light years away, a monitoring station picked up a fragment of a signal. Just a scrap of data, a ghost in the system, before it was blocked. Coordinates. A word in English. Help. The message reached a human fleet 3 days later. And in the command center of the battleship Indomitable, Admiral Sarah Chen looked at the coordinates, looked at the signature attached to the message, and felt her breath catch. Maya. Her granddaughter's name was Maya. "Prepare the fleet," she ordered quietly. "We're going to get our children back." In her cell, Maya couldn't know that help was coming. She couldn't know that her message had gotten through after all. She couldn't know that her grandmother was leading a fleet to rescue them. All she knew was that she had fought. And that was enough. Because humanity doesn't quit. Humanity doesn't surrender. You can bind them in chains. You can lock them in cages. You can beat them down and drug them and try to break their spirits. But humans are the honey badgers of the galaxy. And honey badgers don't care about your chains. They'll bite through them, tear through them, shatter them into pieces, because that's what humans do. They endure, they resist, they fight, and eventually, inevitably, they win.